We all love a good underdog story, especially when the underdog is some geeky computer hacker who takes down huge corporations, or in this case, an entire government. That's exactly what happened when this man outsmarted the NSA, and believe me, you know the NSA's capabilities, you'll agree this is no easy feat. But how did he do it? Let's find out. It all started back on June 6, 2013, when a classified slide bearing the top-secret NSA marking PRISM somehow found its way into the hands of journalists at the Washington Post. The document revealed that 8 major tech companies, including Microsoft, Google, Apple, Facebook and others, were secretly sharing user data with the government. However, the most shocking part wasn't the PRISM program itself, which had been kept under wraps for years, but rather that the NSA had been tracking the phone calls of 120 million Americans. This represented 1 in 3 Americans and included everyone from senators to celebrities to average citizens. As you can imagine, the public was outraged. Suddenly it seemed like Big Brother was watching us every move, listening in on our conversations. Privacy advocates demanded answers, politicians promised investigations, and suddenly the NSA found themselves in hot water. As it turns out, they had been playing us all along. For years, the NSA had claimed that its domestic spying programs were limited to targeting foreign suspects, and had repeatedly denied accusations of mass surveillance. Yet here was hard evidence that they had been misleading us all along. With their reputation and credibility on the line, the government scrambled to contain the damage. But there was one problem though. They didn't have a culprit to blame. How did this secret document leak? To make matters worse, there was no shortage of people who would have benefited from such a leak. Everyone from within the NSA, to journalists, to politicians had something to gain by exposing the program. So the hunt began. The NSA launched a massive internal investigation while outside experts combed through the document looking for clues. Every lead was followed, every angle investigated, but nobody came up with anything concrete. Days turned into weeks, and still there was no answer. But just as the media was about to lose interest, a name surfaced: Edward Snowden, a 29-year-old computer expert who worked for one of the contractors responsible for implementing the NSA's domestic spying programs. He fit the profile perfectly: young, smart, and knowledgeable. But unfortunately for him, he also had a motive. Snowden had become disillusioned with the NSA's practices after discovering the extent of their illegal activity. He believed that the public had a right to know the truth and that the government had abused its power. But then again, so did many other people who could have easily leaked the document. So why was Snowden the only suspect? Well, it turns out that he had been on the radar of both the NSA and the FBI for quite some time. Before his current job, he had worked for another contractor where he developed software that allowed the NSA to track phone calls and internet activity. In addition, he had been a key player in a highly classified program known as Boundless Informant, which involved collecting vast amounts of data on foreign targets. Because of his expertise, Snowden had been granted access to some of the most sensitive information in the country, and it was this access that allowed him to discover the extent of the NSA's illegal activities. When he learned that they were tracking the phone calls of millions of innocent Americans, he knew he had to do something. For the next few months, he worked tirelessly, poring over documents, taking notes, and memorizing details. He knew that if he was going to expose the NSA, he would need to be prepared. He couldn't just leak a document without knowing the full story behind it. And so he continued his research until he had a complete picture of the situation. Finally, he felt ready. Now let's rewind 3 months earlier to January 2013. At the time, Snowden was working as a computer expert for a contractor called Booz Allen Hamilton, where he was responsible for developing software that allowed the NSA to track phone calls and internet activity. But outside of work, he was just an ordinary guy trying to make his way in the world. He loved to play video games, hang out with friends, and go to parties. But as the months went by, he began to feel uneasy about his work. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was involved in something bigger than he was. He tried to push it out of his mind, but the more he tried, the more it grew. Then one day, everything changed. Snowden was working on a new software program that would allow the NSA to track internet activity. He had been working on the project for weeks and was starting to get frustrated. It seemed like no matter what he did, he couldn't get it to work. Just as he was about to give up, he discovered something that made his blood run cold. The software was able to track not only foreign targets, but also the internet activity of people in the United States. At first he thought it was a bug, but soon realized that it was intentional. The NSA had been using this software to spy on innocent Americans. Snowden was shocked. He had never known this was possible. He had always assumed that the NSA was only interested in tracking foreign targets, but now he was beginning to understand the true extent of their power. He knew he had to do something, but he wasn't sure what. He was just a lowly computer programmer, after all. What could he possibly do to stop the NSA? As he struggled with his thoughts, Snowden stumbled upon an article about encryption. He had never really thought much about encryption before, but now he was intrigued. Could encryption be the answer? Could it be used to protect the privacy of innocent Americans? Excited by the possibilities, Snowden set out to learn everything he could about encryption. He read books, watched tutorials, and experimented with different programs. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that encryption was the solution. Not only could it protect the privacy of innocent Americans, but it could also expose the illegal activities of the NSA. And so he decided to create his own YouTube tutorial on the subject. He wanted to share what he had learned with the world and hoped that it would make a difference. Little did he know that this video would soon go viral and change his life forever. Snowden uploaded the video to YouTube on January 24, 2013. He titled it "How to Encrypt Your Own Hard Drive." The video was long and technical, but Snowden was passionate about the subject and it showed. He explained the basics of encryption and how it could be used to keep data safe and secure. He also shared some of the tools and techniques that he had learned while researching the NSA's activities. As the weeks went by, the video began to gain traction. More and more people were searching for information on encryption, and Snowden's video was the perfect resource. By February, the video had racked up tens of thousands of views, and Snowden was starting to feel proud. He had created something that was helping people and making a difference. But little did he know that his video had also caught the attention of someone very important, journalist Glenn Greenwald. Greenwald was a well-known advocate for privacy rights, and was one of the few journalists who had been critical of the NSA from the very beginning. He had been following the debate over domestic spying programs for years, and was eager to get his hands on any information that could shed light on the issue. And when he stumbled upon Snowden's video, he was immediately intrigued. Something about the video stood out to him, and he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Was it the passion in Snowden's voice or the technical accuracy of his explanations? Whatever it was, something told him that this was a young man who knew more than he was letting on. So he decided to reach out to Snowden and see if he could help him with his research. On February 28, 2013, Greenwald sent Snowden a message through YouTube. He introduced himself and explained that he was a journalist who was writing an article about encryption. He asked if Snowden would be willing to talk to him about his video and the technology behind it. Snowden was hesitant at first. He wasn't sure if he could trust a journalist, but something about Greenwald's message made him feel comfortable, so he decided to take the chance. The two men met online, and Greenwald was impressed by what he learned. Snowden was clearly a young man with a bright future ahead of him. But something bothered Greenwald. He could sense that Snowden was hiding something, but whatever it was, he wasn't willing to share. But Greenwald was determined to get to the bottom of it, so he pressed on. And slowly but surely, Snowden began to open up. He talked about his work in the field of computer programming and the projects he had been involved in. He also shared his concerns about the NSA and their domestic spying programs. As the conversation continued, Greenwald's suspicions were confirmed. Snowden knew more than he was letting on. But why? Was he hiding something big? Greenwald wasn't sure, but he was determined to find out. The journalist sensed that this was a pivotal moment. If he could earn Snowden's trust, he might be able to get the inside information he needed to expose the NSA once and for all. So he decided to make a play. He told Snowden that he was working on a book about the NSA and asked if he would be willing to help. Snowden was surprised. He had never considered that someone would want to write a book about his experiences, but the idea intrigued him. Greenwald could tell that he was on the right track, so he pressed on. He explained that he was hoping to publish the book anonymously and asked if Snowden would be willing to meet with him in person to discuss the details. After a few days of contemplation, Snowden agreed. He decided to trust Greenwald and take the risk. On March 21, 2013, the two men met in a hotel room in Hawaii. They discussed the book, the NSA, and the future of domestic spying programs. But as the conversation continued, Greenwald could sense that Snowden was still holding back. He knew there was more to the story and he was determined to find out what it was. Over the next few weeks, Greenwald and Snowden met several times. Each time they met, Snowden revealed more and more information about the NSA and their activities. Greenwald was stunned by what he was hearing. He had suspected that the NSA was involved in domestic spying, but he had no idea the extent of their activities. Snowden was risking everything to expose the truth, and Greenwald was determined to help him. They decided to meet again in Hong Kong. The city was a neutral location and would provide Snowden with enough anonymity to gather more evidence. But as the day of the meeting approached, Snowden began to panic. He had never traveled outside the United States before and was unsure how to proceed. Greenwald understood Snowden's dilemma. He knew that his young source was scared and needed help, so he reached out to Laura Poitman, an investigative journalist who specialized in national security issues. She was also a friend of Greenwald and would be an invaluable asset in this operation. Together, the three of them devised a plan. Snowden would fly to Hong Kong and meet with the journalists in a pre-arranged location. They would then decide the best course of action. On May 20th, 2013, Snowden arrived in Hong Kong. He was nervous but determined. He had come to expose the NSA and bring the truth to light. Greenwald and Portman were waiting for him at a pre-arranged location. They welcomed him and helped him get settled. Then the three of them got to work. They met in a secret location and discussed the information Snowden had gathered about the NSA. Greenwald and Portman were stunned by what they were hearing. Snowden had evidence of widespread illegal activity and was willing to share it with the world. But then a question arose. How could they get the information out? They needed to be careful. The NSA was powerful and wouldn't hesitate to retaliate, but the journalists were determined to get the story published no matter the cost. As the days passed, the team worked tirelessly to gather more evidence and prepare for publication. They knew that the world wasn't ready for what was coming, but they were determined to bring the truth to light. Finally, on June 5, 2013, the day before the Washington Post published their story, it was time for Snowden to make his move. He disappeared, leaving behind no forwarding address and few clues as to his whereabouts. The journalists knew that he was in danger and that the NSA was after him, but they were also aware that they had something big. The story Snowden had given them was explosive and was sure to cause a media frenzy. They published the first of their stories on June 6, 2013. The article detailed the NSA's illegal activities and the extent of their domestic spying programs. The world was shocked. The NSA was supposed to be protecting us, not spying on us. But the story didn't end there. Over the next few days, the journalists published more and more articles about the NSA's activities. Each story was more shocking than the last. The world was reeling from the revelations, and the NSA was under fire. In the midst of the media frenzy, Snowden's face was everywhere. He had become a household name, and the world was talking about him. But where was he? The NSA was searching for him, but they couldn't find him. He had vanished. On June 14, 2013, The Guardian published a new story about the NSA. It was the biggest yet and contained the most damning evidence. Snowden was the source. His name had been revealed, and the world was watching. Snowden was in hiding, but he knew he had done the right thing. He had exposed the NSA and brought their activities to light. But now he needed to stay hidden. The NSA was after him and wouldn't hesitate to arrest him. On June 21, 2013, President Obama addressed the nation about the NSA's activities. He admitted that the agency had overstepped its bounds and promised to rein in their power. He also said that Snowden had committed crimes and would be prosecuted. The world was watching as the story continued to unfold. Snowden was hiding, but he knew that he had done the right thing. He had exposed the NSA and brought their activities to light, but now he needed to stay hidden. The NSA was after him and wouldn't hesitate to arrest him. On June 28, 2013, Snowden appeared on camera for the first time since his leaks. He was in a hotel room in Russia and looked tired but resolute. He said that he had fled to Russia to seek asylum, and that he was willing to give up his passport in order to avoid prosecution. The world was shocked. Snowden was willing to give up everything to protect the truth. The story ended on July 31, 2013, when Snowden was granted temporary asylum in Russia. He had won the battle, but the war for privacy was far from over. He knew that he was in danger and that the NSA was after him, but he also knew that he had done the right thing. He had exposed the NSA and brought their activities to light. As for Greenwald, he continued to investigate the NSA and other government agencies. He was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for his reporting on Snowden's leaks. And so the story ends with the hero of the hour, the wisecracking computer whiz who took on the NSA and won. But it doesn't have to. If you want to hear more of his adventures, please check out the next episode.